Okay, so what does f of 4 mean? Does anyone remember?
Function.
What?
Function.
Function. F is function, and then what? I heard it.
F is 4.
Not f. The x is 4. So this is telling me so it's like a shorthand way to say, hey, substitute in x as 4 and tell me what the function equals. So because if you look, this 4 is replacing that x. So that's what we do in the equation. So I do 5 minus 3 and then 4 to the second here. Now, so understanding what they're asking of you is half the battle, and then following order of operations is the second half. So we're putting that 4 in, and then we have to follow order of operations. Now, some of your calculators are really great at this and can do it well, but some of yours, it's a little bit backwards, so it's a little bit tougher, or if you forget the parentheses, it causes issues. So we do parentheses first. I can't do anything with the 4. I'm doing exponents next. So what does that mean? So I'm doing 4 to the second. So before I do that multiplication, I'm going to raise that 4 to the second power. So 4 to the second is 16. Now this is telling me to multiply. That's more important than the subtraction. And this would be 48 there, right? So 5 minus 48, so we get a negative 43 here. So try the next one. Now be careful with that negative symbol. Give you guys a minute to try that. You probably want to double check in your calculator, but also think about what the answer should be. You're putting that negative 6 in. It's really easy to make a mistake with this one. When you do negative 6 to the second power, what do we get?
Negative 36.
You should not get a negative 36. Careful there. Negative 6 to the second power should be a positive. So this is where you guys could do this wrong because of like calculator error. If you want to put this into your calculator, you probably need parentheses. Otherwise, your calculator might do it wrong. Negative 6 times a negative 6 should be a positive 36. So we get 5 minus 3 times a positive 36. So I multiply 36 times 3, and it's a negative 108 here. And so then when I do 5 minus 108, I get a negative 103. And so it seems like, I know it's like a slight technicality, but again, if I have a positive 100 versus a negative 100, that's a pretty big difference. Like we're talking about, again, like if I'm talking about a $100 bill versus I owe someone $100, it's a big deal. So making sure that makes sense to you guys, okay? So be careful with ones like that. So that function notation isn't meant to be super complicated, but I think if you don't have those reminders of what it means, it's a little bit tougher to solve. And so sometimes there's questions about, well, isn't it telling us to multiply by 4? That's not really what it's doing at all. It's just telling us to substitute that 4 in. Okay? The next couple problems are asking us about slope. So when we're talking about slope, we're talking about our slope formula. But we also could be talking about the equation, the m in that equation, y equals mx plus b. Or we could also be using like rise over run. So all of these possibilities are ways for us to describe and understand slope. So our first one here, we're going to do our slope equation using the y2 minus y1. They don't give us graph paper, so I'm not going to take time to try to figure out what that looks like on a graph. I would just be putting all this information in. Now careful, we do prefer slope in simplest form. That way we all get the same answer, all comparing the same slope. So y2 minus y1, and when I'm talking about my y2, it's always the second digit. Negative 8 minus 2 over 0 minus the negative 4. And I have to subtract in the same order all the time. So if I start with the second point, I have to start with the second point both times on my fraction. So I get negative 10 over positive 4, and then I'm just going to simplify that. Divide them each by 2. That's our slope. And slope we've used quite a bit this year, but I thought it wouldn't be a bad reminder to talk about it. So slope is definitely something that we've brought back in this school year, so hopefully that one's a little bit better for you. Now the next equation is a little bit strange because we can't use these formulas. They're not talking about coordinate points. What this is our line. So what we're going to do is we're going to get it into this form. We're going to make it look like this, because then if I can tell what m is, I can tell you what the slope is. So if they give me just an equation, I can kind of manipulate it to be what I'm looking for. So I'm going to move some things around here. So what do you guys want to move first? I want to get it to be y equals, so what do you want to move?
2x.
I would agree with moving to 2x. So we're going to subtract it. So I'm going to subtract it from each side. So I'm left on the left side with a 3y. This is a 6x, 8 minus 2. Yeah, so now to get my y alone, we're just going to divide everything by 3. So I'm going to divide everything by 3, and again, I'm basically getting this into y equals mx plus b form. Now 6 over 3, I prefer that as simplified. 6 over 3 is just 2x, yeah, 2 over 1. And then negative 12 over 3, which really doesn't matter, is negative 4. So this is my equation. Now if I want the slope, what's the slope going to be? It's just 2. So if I'm just asking for slope, if they ask for the whole equation, there it is. But if they're just asking for slope, I would just say m is 2. And I can find that, again, by getting our equation all alone. Or getting our equation in that slope-intercept form. It sounded like you were doing that on purpose.
I was just trying not to grab it.
All right, we're going to go to the last one here on this side, and then we can take a break. Again, I'm not trying to overload us with a ton of notes in the last few days. And so I don't mind that these are a little bit on the shorter side. I appreciate you guys did a really good job of getting your homework done last night, so I appreciate, or last time, so I appreciate you guys using that time. So they want us to write the equation of the line, and they want us to identify the slope and the y-intercept. So remember, that's our m, and that's also our b. The good news is, from our graph, those are both pretty easy to find. Where am I going to find m or b? What do you guys want to tell me to do here?
Negative 2.
Negative 2 is my b. So just looking at this graph, my b is where it crosses the y-axis. So my b is just negative 2. So I already found like half of what I need to know about this equation. Then my slope, I should also be able to find from this equation. I want to do rise over run. And now, this one's a little bit tougher on your homework. I think I gave you like points to work with. But hopefully you can tell where they cross like a coordinate point, like a really clear coordinate point. Those make these easier to find the slope. So if you guys can kind of see, like every other, it kind of goes through. So we want to do rise over run. So rise is how much I go up or down. How much do I need to go up or down in this? Just 1, yep. So up 1, and then I'm running over
2.
2. So my slope is a half, 1 over 2, and so then I'm ready to write this in an equation. And that's all they were asking us to do here. And though we haven't graphed for a really long time, hopefully that comes back to you pretty quickly. We take a walk? Yeah.
Stick walk.